Good morning everyone. We are going to see what is learning science and what is cognitive science, why this discipline is important from teaching learning point of view. Dear friends, the teachers and teacher educators, they should know what are the recent developments in their field. And the advent of cognitive science, a new discipline that is in the 21st century, it is a new knowledge aspect along with other three knowledge subjects. They are information and communication technology, biotechnology and nanotechnology. So, along with this, they are the four pillars of knowledge in the 21st century. Now, we are going to see what is learning science. Successful teaching is the natural counterpart of successful learning. Suppose if I am teaching as a teacher, I can claim that I am teaching successfully if my students are learning successfully. So, if I teach successfully, that means my students are up to the mark and they are learning properly. So, what is learning? And we know from the primary classes onwards, we are learning step by step and different subjects, and learning is nothing but it makes a difference in our knowledge level, in our attitude level and also in our skill level, any learning. So, it makes a difference and it makes sometimes powerful changes, isn't it? Because of our learning, we are come to the higher positions in our life. So, learning transforms life and now knowledge is the power. Previously, the military power is the superpower. Now, knowledge is considered as the superpower. If I am learning properly, an individual rewards himself intrinsically also. So, the self appreciation, self esteem of an individual will be high if he is learning properly. So, learning makes powerful changes and it transforms life and intrinsically rewarding. And as teachers and teacher educators, we must know the science of learning, that is, what is learning and what are the scientific aspects or the scientific principles behind learning. So, the science of learning is important for every teacher, and the teachers must know the scientific aspects behind learning. For example, from the brain point of view, what is the role of brain in learning, how the brain learns, what are the parts of the brain that are involved in the learning, they are called science of learning. And from 2000 onwards, the brain research is developing fast, and the brain research started from 1990 to 2000 in a very good manner or in a good in a very large scale in the developed countries. So, this decade, that is 90 to 2000, is called decade of brain research. Lot of brain research findings give lot of insight regarding learning and teaching. In the year 2002, a conference conducted in Paris by OECD, it gave an insight about the learning science, the terminology, understanding the brain towards a new learning science. This terminology, learning science, is initiated in this conference. So, it starts the world its perspectives about teaching and learning from this conference, we can say. So, this conference give the new terminology learning science, and this conference speaks about learning in the 21st century. It is regarding understanding the brain and brain parts in the teaching learning process, and it leads to the birth of a new science called learning science, and it gives lot of insights on learning through brain and cognitive science. So, what is cognitive science? Cognitive science, we know it is the science of mind and behavior, and mind normally goes with the brain, and how the mind is responsible for behavior is very much concerned in cognitive science. This is a new interdisciplinary subject. So, cognitive science lot of the time it deals with both artificial intelligence as well as human intelligence. We know human intelligence play a big role, prominent role in learning. On seeing the human intelligence, the man created artificial intelligence in the machines, and this new learning science is basically about the role of the brain parts, the part played by the brain in learning and all. So, we know the structure and function of the brain. It is essential for the teachers to know all these aspects, the brain anatomy, the functions of the brain, what are the parts involved, these and all very essential for a teacher to know. We know the brain comprises of 4 important lobes. They are frontal, parietal, occipital and temporal lobes. So, each lobe is dominating in each function. For example, if you take frontal lobe, it is called motor cortex, which is responsible for the movement of the body, and parietal lobe is called sensory cortex, and this is responsible all the sensory operations of the brain. Occipital lobe is responsible for the visual aspects of our brain. So, this is called visual cortex. It is just located behind our eyes. Temporal lobe is auditory cortex, responsible for auditory functions, and they are adjacent to our ears. And these 4 lobes play an important role. Together it is called cerebral cortex. The cortex denotes the man's ability in thinking, information processing and ultimate control. So, the brain of a human being is divided into 2 parts, left and right hemisphere. Apart from that, each hemisphere is divided into 4 lobes, frontal, parietal, occipital and temporal, and these are the major parts of the brain. Why we must know, the teachers must know the major parts of the brain? It is none of our business, like that some teachers may think. And a 2-wheeler mechanic or 4-wheeler mechanic, he has to know the parts of the 2-wheeler or 4-wheeler. Like that, a teacher must know the parts of the brain, because the teacher is involved, the teacher is always dealing with many kinds of minds. That is, the mind is nothing but brain in action. We are dealing with the brain and body, they are solely responsible for learning, and we must know what is there in our brain and what are the major parts, which part is involved, which cognitive function. So, we teachers we must know. For example, if you take this corpus callosum, which divides the left and right hemisphere, which is responsible for the information flowing from one hemisphere to next hemisphere, and this frontal lobe, which is responsible for thinking, planning, decision making, it played a major role in these cognitive functions. If you take this hippocampus, this is responsible for memory. Like that, each part play an important role in each cognitive function. So, how do we know this, and how, if we know these things, these scientific aspects, what we are going to do in our day-to-day teaching? Definitely, we will help our students to learn more effectively, and also we know the underlying aspects of learning. If we motivate our students, they will learn properly. So, if we apply these scientific principles to the art of the teaching. For example, if you take this cerebellum, we know cerebrum is made up of 4 lobes, which is the major part of the brain. If you take this cerebellum, which is helpful in coordinating voluntary movement and the body balance. So, this is also play an important role. Actually speaking, what is there in our brain? Each and everyone wants to know about it. Sometimes we teachers, we used to mention our students, we used to tell our students, what is there in your brain? Is it clay or brain? Like that we used to comment. It is not possible to open the brain and see what is there. What is happening in the brain, we do not know. That is what this picture depicts, what is happening, how learning is taking place. If we teach how the students are understanding, we know all other parts of the body, how the body functions and all, but still we do not know what is there, how the brain is functioning. If we say something, how it is understood, where is the memory in the brain, like that it is in the functioning of the brain is not completely revealed or not completely seen. So, what is brain is made up of, that is also a interesting aspect to know. It is 82% our brain is made up of water and 10% it has fat, protein, like that. So, the brain is made up of majority by water only. And this is another terminology which the teachers must know, the brain plasticity. What does it mean, that plasticity? That is called neuroplasticity. Our brain is made up of 100 billion neurons, and each neuron is a very tiny structure, and this we are learning because of the actions, functions of our neurons, and these neurons are responsible for our learning. That is why the unit of brain is called neuron. So, what these neurons only responsible for brain plasticity, that is the ability of the brain to change as a result of learning. If we know something today and next day, it helps us to learn better. So, day by day we acquire knowledge, we acquire the concepts, we acquire new memory. So, we build our brain capacity by learning new aspects every day. So, as a result, the brain is changing in due to the learning. So, the brain plasticity is nothing but the ability of the brain to change as a result of daily learning. This is called brain plasticity. And our brain is highly plastic. That means our brain is capable of lot of learning abilities. We have the capabilities and abilities to learn properly. So, we cannot judge our brain, this is capable of learning this much and that much, like that. Our brain is highly plastic, that is its ability is very high. Even a supercomputer cannot be compared with our brain. So, our brain has high brain plasticity, and this plasticity is due to the 100 billion neurons which receive signals and impulses from the body, and in turn it sends the signals and impulses from the brain to the body and also receives from body to the brain. So, they are the communicators, they are the communicators in our brain, and these neurons are able to communicate because of the structure. If you see the dendrite here, these are called the dendrite, and this is the nucleus, and this is the axon part, this is the axon part. So, these dendrites will receive signals and communication from other neurons, other dendrites. And can you guess what is this? It looks like as if with any chemical instruments like a conical flask or any glass instrument. No, these are all, this is nothing but the synapse, that is the firing of the neurons from one dendrite to another dendrite. So, this is called synapse. The neurons communicate each other with the help of the synapses, and if they are stimulated, one neuron sends electrical impulses through its axon to the terminals at the end of the other neuron. At that time, they will release certain chemicals, they are called neurotransmitter, and which are responsible for bringing the signals from one neuron to other neuron through the axon. So, this is called synapse. When firing is taking place among the neurons, one neuron can communicate with thousands of neurons. So, these are all the places, this is simulated and these are all the places where we can see the firing of the neurons. So, this firing of the neurons, the interconnectivity between the neurons, they connect with other neurons, this is called firing. Due to this firing, a neural network is formed. So, a strong neural network is responsible for strong memory as well as the learning process. So, one neuron, this is just a simulation, thanks to the advent of the improvement in the field of neuroscience, how neurons fire and wire, that is firing of the neuron and wiring of the neuron. Wiring of the neurons is the connectivity among the neurons. So, this is simulated here, and this is the synapse, from one neuron, that is dendrite of one neuron connects with dendrites of the other neuron, through which the electricity, the neurochemicals are passed from one neuron to other neuron, and so as a result a strong connectivity as a form of neural network is framed. Now, you can see this picture. Each and every one possesses 100 billions of neurons, about 100 billions of neurons, and at the time of the birth there is no connectivity, but we have the child possess 100 billions of neurons. It has a very thin connectivity, whereas in the age of 6 years you can see here the connectivity is dense, the strong connectivity. So, there is lot of firing and wiring of the neurons. At the age of 14 years, the connectivity is somewhat less. That means, when the child is growing and the child at the time of its birth, there is no connectivity, there is no learning, the child simply lays down and the neurons, the brain is not learning, the brain does not start learning aspect. Whereas, when the child grows up from 1 year to 2 year and it sees the world with lot of curiosity, so the brain starting its learning process. At the age of 5 to 6, the brain is very curious to know lot of things. So, there is a strong connectivity in the brain, and later it decreases. So, this shows, this picture depicts that connectivity is more during the early childhood. That is why early childhood and early detection of early learning is very important. We have to make our child to learn properly from the early ages, that is from starting from 4 to 5, 5 to 6, etc. So, actually speaking, what is learning? What is the role of the teachers in the learning process? We teachers, we have to make a strong learning process in the brain. That means, we have to teach our students in such a way, so that there is lot of firing and wiring in the brain of our students. What is happening at the time of braining, at the time of firing? The dendrites of each neuron is growing. So, the dendrites are growing and it connects with other dendrites. So, this growing of the dendrites, that means new dendrites are formed, in the neurons, in the existing neurons. These new dendrites are called learning process. So, if the neurons are able to communicate properly with other neurons, if they are in a position to connect with other neurons, then the dendrites will grow. So, this is called learning process. So, growing of dendrites leads to learning, whereas some dendrites will not grow, it leads to pruning of neurons, that is pruning of dendrites, that leads to death of the neurons. So, which one is important for learning? Growing of dendrites is important for learning, whereas pruning of dendrites is it will not lead the neurons to learn properly. So, sometimes due to the pruning of dendrites, the neurons will die. So, Almighty has given us 100 billion neurons. If the neurons are properly activated in the learning process, it will leads to growing of the dendrites and the existing neurons become strong in their connectivity. Whereas, if we forget something, if there is some problem in our brain, then it leads to pruning of the dendrites, which leads to death of the neurons. So, learning is the capacity of the brain to change. What is happening due to learning? Our brain is changing. How it is changing? In the form of growing dendrites. So, in short, we can say that the brain is learning. That means the neurons, the neural dendrites in the neurons are growing. So, this leads to more number of connectivity in the neurons. If you see the neuron structure, it is just like a tree. How the branches of the tree are growing, like that in our brain. If we receive effective stimuli, if a child receives better stimuli, better learning environment and interesting and challenging tasks and all, due to that the dendrites in our neurons, they will grow. So, growing of the dendrites is called learning according to the neuroscientist. We educators, we used to define learning that learning is nothing but change in the behavior, whereas the neuroscientists, they define learning is equal to growing of the dendrites, and this growing of the dendrites is possible by effective teachers, by effective activities. So, all the children receive this proper experience, learning experience by the teachers. Definitely there is a strong connectivity is formed in the brain, that is called neural network. On seeing the biological intelligence and human intelligence only, the artificial neural network is framed in the computers, in the machines, that is called ANN, that is artificial neural network. So, this neural network is responsible for our learning as well as our memory. When we learn something and when we remember in our memory, that also due to the neuronal network that is formed in our memory. If we possess strong memory, that shows our neuronal network is strong. So, memory, we know it is short term memory and long term memory. We have both types of memory. If we remember for a longer duration, it is called a long term memory. Suppose as an adult remembers what has happened in the primary classes, what he has learnt in the primary classes after 10 years, 20 years, like that, it is called LTM. That is the person is able to frame a long term memory. And suppose our college students and most of our students, they study before previous day for the examination. After 1 month or after 1 week, they will forget what they have learned. That is called STM. So, we have both types of memory. So, all this learning and memory are inseparable. They are very much responsible for any academic success. So, learning and memory are interconnected. If we learn properly, we will keep it in our memory properly. So, this LTM is very much important. If we learn properly, we will keep our concepts in the LTM. And the next we have different types of memory like declarative memory, procedural memory, episodic memory and semantic memory. Declarative memory, we know that any event that we remember, they are kept in our declarative memory. Then procedural memory, the lab, what we are learning in our lab by practicals and all, we remember many concepts and we learn many concepts. That is called, that will be kept in the procedural memory. Episodic memory, it is nothing but we remember incident after incident, happening after happening. So, that is called episodic memory. For example, we remember what happened yesterday, what happened day before yesterday, like that we used to remember the things. And semantic memory is in the form of words. So, all types of memory play an important role in this learning process. Dear friends, if you see this picture, for example, if I will show you for 20 seconds. if you see this 20 seconds, how many pictures you remember after 20 seconds? Some may remember 10 objects, some may remember more than 10. Like that, our memory is different from person to person. The capability of memory is different. What is this? Can you see and just tell me what is this? T, T, L, S, H, W, W, A, U, A, W, S, H, L, D, I, S. Is it possible to remember all these letters? Because they are not connected, we have to, it is very difficult to remember this string of letters. Again we have to depend upon our rote memory, and for some people this rote memory is easy, for some it is not easy. Suppose if I tell you connect all these letters, then it is easy for you to remember. For example, the first T stands for twinkle, next T stands for twinkle, twinkle, twinkle little star. Like that, if you remember the first letter of each word in the rhyme, twinkle, twinkle, then it is easy for you to remember. So, memory has connectivity. If you connect with certain aspect, then it is easy for you to remember. See, the text memory, textual memory is itself is very difficult for our students. What about this numerical memory? Numerical memory, it is even very difficult, isn't it, to process. The brain is very process the numerical values and numerical aspects. It is not easy for everyone. That is why a few people learning mathematics is easy. For many people learning mathematics is not so much easy. So, processing of numerical information or learning the numerical aspects, mathematical concepts is very difficult, and to keep memory all the mathematics aspects, values and all, it is very difficult for the people. So, what is happening in the memory and learning? This cognitive science is giving lot of inputs about learning and memory. That is why this is very important. In the 21st century, the advent of cognitive science is very much important, and it is studied widely in the developed countries. And emotions also play an important role in the learning. That is what the neuroscientists and cognitive scientists, they stress that emotions are gateways of learning. For example, if you take this amygdala, what is this amygdala? Amygdala is nothing but part in our limbic system. Limbic system is nothing but the inner part of the brain is called the limbic system. It has 4 important parts like amygdala, hippocampus, hypothalamus, and these parts are responsible for all our emotions, that inner part of the brain. And we have to now some exponents in cognitive science, they are for example for Kane and Kane, they are able to give some important principles regarding learning. All these principles are considered as very important principle. For example, if you take each and every brain is unique, that is why we have to, there are individual differences in our classroom. We are dealing with the students. If we teach with one method, some students are able to understand, but at the same time that method is not working out in other students, for the reason that each brain has unique capacity, it is unique. As we teachers, we have to follow these principles, and we have to keep in mind that these principles, they are called brain based learning principles, BBL, and the teachers, we have to teach BBT, that is we have to teach brain based teaching principles when we are teaching. So, if you look at these words, these are all nouns, isn't it? Pen, vessel, food, yellow, these are all very easy to remember because they are noun. They are tangible objects. Suppose if I want to show a window, I can show it and the students will remember properly. So, these tangible objects or nouns are easy to remember, whereas the adjectives, the verbs, these are all very difficult to remember, isn't it? In our memory, some types of words and some aspects, some concepts are easy, whereas some aspects and some concepts are not to that extent it is easy. So, we teachers, we have to think about that. We have to, when we are teaching, we have to teach the techniques of memory also. They are called mnemonic strategies. So, we should not give the concepts alone to our students, we have to give them, we have to tell them how to remember better. So, this is also the job of the teacher. And in our day to day life, in our academic life, we are seeing that girls are getting more marks than boys in the examinations. That is why in the newspaper it is always flashed, boys are lagging behind girls. Why our educational system is like this, or is it girls have more memory power or more learning capacity than boys? Is it so? We have to think about that. Why girls are always scoring more marks? Because they are mugging up. Most of the time girls used to mug up, girls used to learn better than boys because they are allotting more time for studying, whereas the boys will not sit in a place and they will mug up. They will they want to understand everything, isn't it? Language is very easy for girls, whereas studying the languages is not that much easy for our boys. So, as a cognitive scientist, I can say that this is due to the difference in the, this is due to our educational system. We most of the time we rely upon rote memory. Examinations, we are making our children to mug up and write. This is very handy to the boys than our handy to the girls than our boys. That is why girls are getting more marks. So, we have to change, we have to think, and we have to change the examination system, as well as we have to make them to think and answer than to mug up and answer. And sometimes we say that we are using only 5 to 10% of brain and all. These are all neuro myths, isn't it? This is not true, because we have not there is no evidence for these things and all. These are called neuro myths. So, is there any difference between boys and girls, or male and female brains? That also cognitive science studies very deeply about male and female brains. That is, they are structurally male and female brains are same, whereas functionally there is some differences. There are some differences between male and female brains, the cognitive scientists now say. So, just to look into this picture, the word black is written in red, isn't it? The word black is written in green. So, there is some sort of confusion regarding the color and remembering the words. In order to give the mismatch between the word and the color, this picture is used to test the memory. And this is also, suppose if I ask you for 1 minute or 2 minutes, I am giving this slide and I am asking you to please by heart what are the applications of ANN. Will you by heart within 1 or 2 minutes? Is it possible? So, again you have to depend upon the rote memory. Suppose if there is some connection or connectivity within the application, then I will remember better. So, as a teacher, I am teaching our B.Ed students the subject, that is cognitive science. I am just giving what is the neural network and what is the ANN. Just I am asking my students to remember the applications of ANN. So, if I give like this, they have to depend most of the time and depending upon the rote memory only. Suppose if I ask them to apply any mnemonic strategies or any strategy to remember better, then I told them a story. Once upon a time there is a robot and it is very good in weather prediction and all, and it has very good machinery for monitoring, and it is very good in engine management and all, but one day it does not process the signal properly. So, the robot got ill and it has got some sickness. So, it want to go to a doctor, and the doctor it want to take some medicines. but if we want to go to a doctor we need money. So, robot is not earning any money, but luckily it has some money in the stock market, and then he got some money. Then he went to the medical diagnosis, and then the doctor processed the robot, and the doctor give some medicine and told that it is with the help of nanotechnology. The doctor gave some medicine, and it failed in the pattern recognition, speech production and speech recognition and all, because its data was compressed too much, and the doctor advised to allow the robot for playing, and then it will become energetic and it will forecast properly. Like that, if I give some sort of story, then my students will remember better. Even though my students are adults, if I tell them interestingly in the form of a story, I can see that they remember better. So, we have to apply some mnemonic strategies or some memory techniques in order to make them to remember properly. So, emotions are very critical to learning, and in the limbic system I told you there are 4 main parts which are very much important for our emotions. So, that is why we have to connect our students emotionally first. Before teaching, we should connect with them emotionally, because emotions are the best investment in teaching. If we connect, if we motivate, if we create some interesting environment in our classroom, then teaching will be very easy for us. So, we can say that emotions or gateways are critical to learning. So, this is the limbic system, and on the whole the cortex, the limbic system, the cerebellum, even the medulla oblongata, everything is responsible for our learning. So, in short, the brain plays an important role in our learning process, and previously how the brain learns, what are the parts, everything is not known to us, but thanks to the advent of technology, both in neuroscience as well as in computer science, and this cognitive science is emerging as a very good discipline in the 21st century. So, we teachers need to have need to study, we need to have updates, knowledge about this cognitive science, that is very important for the teachers. So, now not only that, we know so far we have seen that how neurons play an important role, how the brain and brain parts play an important role, and during the synapse chemicals will be released in the brain. They are called neurotransmitters. Our brain secretes more than dozen chemicals in our brain. For example, if you take this serotonin, after taking carbohydrate rich food, this serotonin will secrete. That is why during after the lunch time our students will not learn properly, because of this secretion of serotonin. After a heavy lunch, this neurochemical serotonin will secrete. Like that, acetylcholine is very much important for memory. This dopamine is also very much important. So, we have to study, we should know what are these neurotransmitters or neurochemicals, what is their role in brain learning, etc. Likewise, when the brain is active, we can have these endorphins in our body. If our body secretes endorphins, we will be in a happy mood or in active mood. When the body secretes, brain secretes cortisol, it will cause lot of stress. So, cortisol is the stress hormone, endorphins are the opposite to that. Then we will have proper food, we will have proper appetite and proper mood and happiness and all. So, how these now coming to next aspect of this PPT, that is how it is possible to study the living brains. Previously, it is not possible to study the living brains, only people after the death, that is dead brains were studied, and dead brains, it is no use to study the dead brains because the activity is almost stopped. But thanks to the technology now, with the help of EEG, MEG and many scanning techniques like this, it is possible to study the living brains. If you say this is EEG, a cap is placed on the scalp and the brain activity is recorded. So, like this we have many brain scanning techniques nowadays. Thanks to the scanning technologies, the living brains are studied to a larger extent. Each and every cognitive activity is studied with the help of these scanning techniques, and you can see these brain scans and all with the help of radiologist and neuroscientist. We are coming to know more facts about this brain. For example, if you take this fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, it helps us to know how the brain is performing many functions. The highlighted areas are involved in the cognitive functions. When particular cognitive function is given to the individual, at that time it is we can know which particular part is the acting in the brain. Like that, many technologies, the scanning techniques are helping us to study the brain. So, in short, now I am asking you the question, who are the cognitive scientists? So, cognitive scientists is an interdisciplinary subject. All the fields are very important to become a cognitive scientist. For example, cognitive scientist must know something of psychology. He has to apply computer technology, there is artificial intelligence and neuroscience and philosophy. So, all these subjects are essential for a cognitive scientist. So, it is an interdisciplinary subject. So, cognitive science is growing nowadays. The research as well as the knowledge in cognitive science, especially cognitive science and artificial intelligence, is growing in a very good manner. So, dear friends, teachers are the brain changers, and we are responsible for bringing good connectivity in our students' brain. We are developing the brain, we are growing the brains of our students, because when we teach properly, then a strong neural network is formed in the student's brain. So, teachers are the brain changers. So, thank you brains, for your listening.